Any and all questions. It can be about anything.
Yeah, any and all questions. So the first question that I have for you is, what is your book about?
So, the subtitle is How Entrepreneurs Turn Failure into Success. And so I really wanted to write this bold, honest book about what really happens to entrepreneurs on the way to their journey, whatever it may be. And some entrepreneurs don't make it. You and I both know that 85% of the businesses in the United States fail after the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I was in year 3 of Skybridge Capital, and we were in a tailspin. We were ready to descend into the rabbit hole. And what happened to us is we started our company in 2005. We raised a ton of capital. We're in the asset management business. And then the global financial crisis hit in September of 2008. And our world started spinning out of control. And so I wrote a really honest book about my self-consciousness, my anxiety. You mentioned the ulcers before we went live, the ulcer.
Right.
I also wear a mouth brace now because I was grinding my teeth.
Yeah, I actually have to do that as well.
Yeah, but you're a CEO of
Yeah.
Bookstr. So what ends up happening is there's a great expression in life that you have to be careful what you wish for because sometimes you end up getting it. And so here I was as an entrepreneur, and I'll be brief on my background. I grew up in a middle-class family. Parents didn't go to college. I went to a public high school, went to Tufts University in Boston, and then I went to Harvard Law School. Then I spent 7 years at Goldman Sachs, although I got fired in the middle of it, which we could go into if you guys have interest.
Talk about that.
I write about it in the books. I got fired from my first job because it really wasn't very good at my job. And then I got rehired into Goldman Sachs into another area. So I try to give a very honest book so that if a millennial picked up this book or a first-time entrepreneur, it wasn't a sanitized version of things. I could read you my resume: Tufts, Harvard Law School, Goldman Sachs, built 2 companies. I won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2011. And you say, oh, that's all great, and it's all sanitized version of success, but that's not really how it happened. I had tremendous anxiety and pitfalls in the 2008-9 period of time.
Yeah. And
I thought I would write a book about that and sort of categorize it for people so that they could read it and say, you know what, this is a real story. It's an honest story. And so many people have this sort of ups and downs happen to them. Steve Jobs, thrown out of Apple Computer. We're now talking on the Apple Computer movie studio, also known as an iPhone, right? But he was thrown out of the job, and then he had to come back. Bill Gates, he failed with the first operating system. He had to go to his dad and borrow money. Michael Dell, when I was working at Goldman Sachs, he came into us to raise money. His laptops were catching on fire in 1993, similar to what happened to the Galaxy 7. So every entrepreneur, and those are terrifically successful entrepreneurs, way more than me, but every entrepreneur has these fits and starts, these ups and downs, and I thought that would be neat to write about as opposed to some, glossy thing that we often read about. Self-congratulation is really not a good virtue, and it's also not something that my family really aspires to.
Sure. So were you just kind of reflecting one day and you thought, oh, I want to write a book about this, or did you, what inspired the writing process itself?
So I've written 2 other books. My first book was called Goodbye Gordon Gekko, How to Find Your Fortune Without Losing Your Soul. I was in Oliver Stone's movie, the sequel, Wall Street 2. So I do a lot of television. I was on CNBC at that time. He saw me, and then he cast me in the movie as myself, which was a lot of fun. And so that book sold very well for Wiley, and then they asked me to write another book for them. I had a 3-book contract with them.
Okay.
So the second book was called The Little Book of Hedge Funds, which was a honest account of the ups and downs of the hedge fund industry, what's good about hedge funds and what's bad about them. Even though I'm in the hedge fund industry, I really tried to make it objective.
Sure.
And so I had a 3-book contract. They said, okay, these books have sold. We need you to write another book. And I was like, oh, I got to think about what I really want to write about. And then it dawned on me that our near-death experience in 2008-9 would be an interesting narrative because it's truthful and it also speaks to the core of entrepreneurship. People like yourself, and new startups. People are thinking about ideas. Somebody said to me the other day, I can't remember who, he said, millennials are not only out looking for jobs, but they have to actually go out and possibly create their own job, and create their own business. And so I thought this would be a pretty good guide for them.
So what would your advice be to somebody who has just created their own business or who's thinking about creating their own business?
Well, on the thinking side, you got to start obviously with a plan. Now, your plan is not going to work. I'll just give you the news flash on that. But you have to have a plan, because once you have a plan, you start that alternative thinking and that adaptation and pivot thinking that you need as an entrepreneur. And so Mike Tyson has a great line that everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face, and then their plans change. And so for me, I started Skybridge as what was called like a hedge fund seeding business, where we were basically a venture capitalist in the hedge fund space. We were terrible at that.
And everyone told you not to do it as well.
Everybody told me not to. Well, that's another thing. If it's a good idea, people will double down and tell you how bad the idea is. And so you have to listen to your core. If you don't read my book or you read my book, I hope that the message that you would get from my book is that you have to listen to your core. And you have to follow your journey. And you have to think about your life in a way where I would pick the thing that you love to do, irrespective of the potential that you could fail at it. Yeah. And I think that's ultimately how we get to the highest expression of ourselves and the best version of ourselves. And so there I was. I started a business, sold one successfully, starting another business, and I was failing, and it was brutal. And I remember the day, and I can tell you the exact date. It was September the 16th, 2008. I had just landed in Australia. The markets were down 8,900 points. We were going into the global financial crisis. And I got off the plane. I looked at my phone and showed all the stock prices and all the money that we were losing. I was like, okay, this is it, man. I'm going out. Skybridge is going to become no bridge, or blown up bridge, or the bridge to nowhere. And I was like, okay, this is it. So then I started the process of the death experience, where you start to realize that it's not going to happen for you. Yeah. And the first thing was my social anxiety. Oh my God, what am I going to say at the local country club? Or what am I going to say to my buddies that I went to Harvard Law School with? And the second thing was, okay, this is really happening. How am I going to get my affairs in order? And then once I got to the realization that it could happen, it was going to happen, there was great clarity of thinking. And so my message to people is that if you can accept as an entrepreneur and embrace the concept of failure, you're actually going to bizarrely increase the quotient of your success, because you start thinking really clearly, and then you start taking risks, that are cool risks. I'm not talking about bet all the money on black in Las Vegas or something like that, but I'm talking about what we did with our conference. We had the hedge fund industry was evacuating the conference space. All the big banks were evacuating the conference space. So one of my partners said, okay, let's go throw a conference in Las Vegas. I'm like, all right, this guy's crazy. I said, it's either going to be the farewell party, like Skybridge hit the the iceberg like the Titanic and we're going down, or this will be known as a pivot point in our industry. We're going to look like visionaries. And so I wrote that in the book. I was at one of the universities, I think I was at Rutgers. One of the kids raises his hand. He says, could you please explain to me the brilliance and the vision of how you started the SALT conference? I'm like, no, we were basically out of business. Right. And then we were trying to come up with ideas. And so it's very binary. If it failed, you would have said, oh, that's the idiot that threw that conference in Las Vegas in 2008 and went out of business. Or it would succeed, and you're like, okay, there's the visionary. Let's give him the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. So I really want to lay it out for people and try to express it to them in the most honest way possible, which I think will help you make your decisions about going into business for yourself. Or if you're in business, you have a friend in business that you can actually relate to that's really talking to you in real time about the ups and downs of it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It kind of sounds too, we have a lot of authors who are a member of our audience. It's almost like that kind of is the author experience as well.
No question.
Authors, did you, when you started working on your book deal, was it obviously, were they like, oh, no, yeah, of course, or did you have any rejection on that?
Oh, no, it was like a total disaster. So basically, my first book, I did everything wrong. If Wiley, the publisher's listening, they're going to probably be mad at me, but I'll tell you guys candidly. I was an unknown person, unknown author, subject writing skills probably, and so they basically said to me, tell you what, we'll offer you this book contract, but you got to guarantee us a certain number of book sales. Right. So in a weird way, I was self-publishing the first book. Sure. But I got very lucky because when I gave the manuscript of the book to Oliver Stone, who was just bringing out Wall Street 2, he said, this is a really cool book. This is like the death of Gordon Gekko. And a lot of millennials don't know who Gordon Gekko was, but in the 1980s, he was the antagonist or protagonist of the movie Wall Street. Oliver Stone basically had him as a corporate raider. He committed insider trading and ended up going to jail. And he said something that is like loathsome, I think, and it was greed is good. So my book was Goodbye Gordon Gekko, and why that's like a bad thing for our society and for Wall Street. So we tied the book into the movie, and then the book really sold. And so that's how the snowball effect came as an author.
There you go.
As a first-time author, I wasn't at all respected. So if you're an author out there listening and you've known that feeling of disrespect, I'm in your club. Let me put it that way.
Right. We have some questions that have come in from our audience. One of them is, who is your favorite author and why?
Okay, so I love books, okay? And so I nailed the fact that you're a Capricorn. I'm also, Capricorns love books, by the way, not to get into the astrology, but so I'm probably buying 25 books for every 2 that I can read. So I have a number of different favorite authors, so I'm going to give you one from a long time ago, and I'm going to give you one from today. Okay? So Herman Wouk, W-O-U-K, he's still alive. He's probably in his 90s. He wrote 2 great books in the late 70s called Winds of War and War and Remembrance. And these are historical novels about World War II. I think if you want to have like a pretty great soap opera-like read, but also get some historical context of what was going on in the world during the wars, at least the Second World War, he would be somebody I would strongly recommend.
Okay.
More contemporary to that, I love Lee Childs. I love Daniel De Silva. I'm a little bit of a spy enthusiast.
Okay.
So those are 2 of my favorite, what I would describe as fiction authors, although they are writing with some great detail about contemporary accuracy of contemporary things. On the nonfiction side, I'm a big Michael Lewis fan. That probably is not going to surprise you because of the industry I'm in, Wall Street. I always think he has a very interesting angle on what he's writing about. I'm a Bill Cohane, C-O-H-A-N fan. He wrote a great book about Bear Stearns. He wrote a really, really good book about the Duke lacrosse scandal called The Price of Silence. And so those books are real and they're instructive. And I often feel like the best authors are the ones that are already inside your brain. They're either part of your subconscious or they're part of your forward-thinking cognition. You're like, wow, I have thought of that before. Or wow, as a fiction writer, I have felt that before.
Right.
And so I think we get from our authors such a great expression of the human condition. And so those are a couple of my favorites.
Okay. You guys will have to check those out. We also have, who has had the greatest influence on your career and or your book? So maybe two questions.
The greatest influence on my career is probably like a really cliche thing, but for sure the greatest influence on my career are like my mom and dad. Okay, and I'll explain to you why, because they never went to college. They got up early, worked super hard. My dad started with a lunch pail, 3:15 in the morning. And let me tell you, I'm from an Italian family on Long Island. If he was home at 5:15 to eat dinner and you weren't there, there was what to pay. Okay, and so unless you were like playing sports, you got the excuse. But so we had a pretty strong work ethic in the family. We had a good neighborhood vibe. But my parents really bought into the American dream. Okay, they were a part of the aspirational working middle class, and so they were like, go to school, do your homework, buy into the system, and anything you want, you can really do. And so they actually had me believe in that as a kid, and so that's why I pursued the things that I did. I don't think I could have had the strength and temperament or the ability to take risks if I didn't have people like that believing in me at the early part of my life.
Absolutely.
Someone today that I respect enormously in business, and I wrote about in my acknowledgments, and even throughout the book, is Andrew K. Bozar Jr. He was my business partner at Goldman. We left together 20 years ago, December 1st, 1996. We left Goldman Sachs together to start our first business. And so he was maybe 10 years older than me, and he was an amazing guy, generous, professional. He was from the Midwest. He had these classic Midwestern values, and I really looked up to him, and he was a role model to me in many ways.
Great. And are those the same inspiration for your book, or?
So the inspiration for the book was, it's a good question. Let me see how I phrase it. So I wrote the 2 other books, and then this book came to me one night when I was asked to speak, I had actually won this, I don't know, it was like the National Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship Award. And so, you know, it was a big night. I brought my parents, and I went up to get the award, and then people asked to take some questions, and people were like, you know, again, it's no false modesty or anything, but people were like overly praising me for being able to figure out the business and create the media brand, and I was like, okay, you know, that's great and everything, but that's not like how it really happened.
Right.
And so I remember coming off the stage and saying, you know what, no false modesty, I want to write a real story about what really happens so that like people could read it and say, hey, you know what, I could be that person. Or, you know, I mean, I wrote in the book, I don't know if you got to the part where my first job interview, I'm wearing like 100% polyester. Okay, so I have a polyester shirt on, it's like white on white, a polyester suit. I had a black Guido polyester tie. Okay? I was fully flammable for my first job interview. Okay. In the meantime, you know, I thought I looked fantastic. I had no ideas. I'm showing up at the interview. There's a couple of guys at Goldman Sachs, and I answered all the questions beautifully. And then the guy's like, "All right, look, man, you're the worst dressed person at the Harvard Law School. Okay, you gotta go get yourself a suit. Okay, we can't invite you back to Goldman Sachs dressed like this." And I remember being like mortified. I remember calling my mom, and like I thought I was like dressed for success, you know.
Right.
Just like these people don't know what they're talking about, but they actually did. You know, natural fibers are probably like a better way to go to a job interview, right? So
Why do you think that you would just hire the right candidate anyway?
yeah, I know, but you know, and I write about it in the book that you have to present yourself in a certain way because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, the way we present ourselves to other people forms a reticular image in their minds. You know, I do write about it, the Facebook effect in the book, and how we're biologically designed to recognize each other's faces, and then all of a sudden we develop empathy for people. One of the reasons why there will always be fame is it has to do with the way the reticular system is set up, because if you don't meet Brad Pitt or you don't meet Kim Kardashian, but you're relating to them asymmetrically from the movie or from the television, then all of a sudden you want to bind with them or bond with them and create that symmetrical relationship.
Sure.
So I do believe that image, whether we like it or not, image is a part of our lives, and we have to sort of make sure that we manage ourselves that way.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. Can you tell me a little bit about your writing process? Were you writing in the morning? I get the feeling that you're a pretty busy guy, so I'm guessing, like, how are you balancing your writing and your life?
Really good question. So the iPhone 6 basically changed my writing process. So if you said to me that question in 2006, I had a laptop and I was writing in a library, or I was writing in my house, my home office, or even in my own corporate office. But now with like Google Docs and all these like cool tools on the iPhone, I find myself writing. I'm writing standing up, waiting online. I'm writing in an airplane. I'm writing in my home. I'm writing in the back of an Uber. I find that what I have to do for my writing process is there's 15 chapters in there, and so when I say, okay, what do I want to write about? And then I take index cards and I write down what I want to write about. Then I start organizing the index cards into what I think will be chapters.
Oh, okay.
And then I lay it out on one page and say, okay, chapter 1 do this, chapter 2. But then I don't write sequentially. You know, I could have wrote chapter 13, which is on the concept of sprezzatura, which if you want I can explain it to you. But I probably wrote that first because I think that is so true about life. Okay, can I explain sprezzatura? Okay, so sprezzatura is an Italian word, and the best way I can describe it is like watching a duck on a pond. Okay, the duck is moving like super seamlessly on the pond, and everything looks fantastic. But under the water, that duck is moving.
Right.
Okay? And so I write in chapter 13 of this book that you're the entrepreneur, you're feeling all of your own personal struggle, all of that flippy-flop going on underneath the water. You're looking at the other person, and they're moving like this. Okay? And so the point of me bringing it up is that don't be intimidated by anybody.
Sure.
Okay? At the end of the day, everybody has their own struggle. Everybody's dealing with some kind of dysfunctional family issue. My family would put the fun in the word dysfunctional. We have to. Again, everybody's got something going on, and so what we do is we compare ourselves to other people, or we compare our business success to somebody else's, and it's a bunch of nonsense. Don't do that. Focus on what Bookstr, where you want it to be in 5 years, and don't care about your competitors. Focus on the people and the culture that you want to create for your people, and focus on the delivery mechanisms that you're going to bring to your clients, and do it with the most passion and energy that you can, and it's likely to work out. They may not happen exactly as you want them to, and certainly Skybridge has not. If you told me I was going to be the host of Wall Street Week, I was going to run the SALT conference in Las Vegas, we went from $400 million to $200 million in assets under management on the way to bankruptcy, and now we're running $12.3 billion. We're the 10th largest in our industry. I never would have believed any of that. Mm-hmm. But things have a way of working out as long as you can keep your mind fluid and you can keep yourself positive.
Yeah, and I think probably just from what I'm reading about your book, or in your book, is that you kind of address some of that in your book, saying like, these are the struggles that you might have. It's kind of like a playbook, or so to speak, for anyone that's an entrepreneur.
It's a screenplay. It's an entrepreneurial screenplay. Here's the plot.
Yeah.
And you're the protagonist in the plot, and I got bad news for you. There's some really bad twists and turns that are going to happen.
Sure.
But it'll end up really happy for you is if you pursue it, recognizing that the journey and the process of it is as worthy as whatever the destination that you're shooting for.
Okay. And then we have another question as well. Who will gain the most from this book?
Okay, so I really did try to write it for an early stage entrepreneur, or for somebody like you said, coming into entrepreneurship. Right. And so I wanted it to be, in fact, I just got called by one of the business schools. One of these business professors at Washington University read the book, called me and said, hey, can you ship me some of these? And he wants to add it to his course curriculum. And so I would just want it to be like a book that somebody could pick up. They could learn a little bit about networking, selling, negotiation, planning, and then the most important thing, self-awareness. And so that's the people I think would enjoy the book, or I would hope would enjoy the book.
Yeah, I would also say like there's kind of like certain manuals for startups. There's the Lean Startup, obviously, and then Zero to One.
Peter Thiel wrote a great book.
Sure.
In fact, so that, can I tell a story?
Yeah.
So the title was From Nowhere to Somewhere. I'm like, okay, that's not going to work for me, because it's like Peter's book, it's from
Right.
0 to 1.
Yeah.
By the way, Peter wrote a great book.
Yeah.
And I've handed Peter's book out to people, and I read Peter's book, and it's a little different from my book.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a little bit more engineering orientated, and it's a little more like, technical.
Yeah.
This is more of a narrative, and I tried to bundle in some stories to make it relatable.
But then you also have tips on here too, like how to manage your employees, or the kind of atmosphere that you want to create when you're
100%.
starting a business from scratch. So I think all that's very valuable.
Watch your pronouns, because I think that's a very big indication of how you're going to manage. So for me, I like people that say we, they say our. We think about the team. We think about together. I don't really love the people that say I, me, mine. This is going to sound very cliche, but you should really take it to heart. Team, together, everyone achieves more. Okay, my high school football coach used to say that to us, and he used to reward the people that could subordinate their ego to the betterment of the team. And good entrepreneurs, they know how to set up their team in a way that does that, because then you can take a small group of people and you can do monumental things. I mean, we have a 2,200 person conference, but we only have 3 people at Skybridge working on it, because we're able to leverage the rest of that team because of the culture that we're trying to create. Yeah. Also, people have never worked for me. People work with me. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Because now when I say the word for, I'm like this supercilious, arrogant dude where I've got people that are working for me and I'm lording over them. Okay? I don't need that. I need that like a headache. I would rather be at the cocktail party saying people work with me, that we set this up as a collaboration, and this way the people feel more autonomous, they'll take more ownership, and they'll work with more purpose, and if they feel like they're working for you in an inordinate way, where it becomes a job and some level of drudgery. Yeah. Make sense?
Yeah. What companies would you say that you like the way they run their company? So as you were building yours, what companies were you looking to?
Well, listen, I would say that the 2 companies that I study the most carefully are Apple Computer and Starbucks. And so I'll explain why. Because these 2 companies are in the commodity business. And by the way, I'm in the commodity business. So I have an asset manager called Skybridge Capital, but there's trillions of dollars in asset management, and there's a gajillion competitors of mine. And so you would say, okay, this guy's in the commodity business. Apple computer is selling a laptop, a hard top, a smartphone, a watch, and I probably missed one, a desktop computer. Those 5 products are being offered by everyone in electronics. Yet Apple has figured out a way to create a customer experience and an ecosystem so that people feel cool when they own an Apple product. They feel like they're part of something, whether it's their App Store, the iBooks, Apple Music. There's an ecosystem. One of the largest commodities, or the highest volume commodities in the world is coffee. Okay, so you're a lot younger than me, but when I was growing up as a kid, you'd go to a Greek diner and you'd buy a coffee for 25 cents.
Right.
Today, you're walking into these earth tones, and someone's wearing a green apron, and they're speaking in a totally different language than you, with the vente skimmy and all this sort of nonsense, and then paying $5 for the coffee, okay? And so what did Howard Schultz do? He created this experience for the customer, and he turned a base commodity into this experience, and he's able to charge a premium price for it. And so for me, those companies I try to steal from. And I try to steal from them in the most flattering ways. I try to think about, okay, how can I create that experience for us? So we have a newsletter. Mm-hmm. I host Wall Street Week on Friday nights at 8 o'clock on the Fox Business Network, and I bring people from around the industry on to talk to them. So now my clients feel like there's some level of accessibility to us.
Right.
I'm writing books so that people can pick up a book and they can learn about us or our business. We do a conference. I'm really trying to make the customer feel that they have access to us and that we can provide them with insight. And so that's how we're trying to differentiate ourselves from our competition.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you,
thank you.
Speaking with our audience.
Thank you very much. The book will take 4 hours and 5 minutes to read. That's a plane ride down to Florida and back if you live here in New York. I did design the book for that, and I wanted you to be able to say, you got the gold star in kindergarten for reading the book, even if it was only 3 pages. That's sort of my book.
And then you also have the the intro by Tony Robbins as well.
Yeah, that was very nice. And yeah, he read the manuscript and he gave it 2 thumbs up, so he's willing to put his name on the book. So.
That's great.
And Peter Diamandis, too, who was the founder of the X Prize.
Yeah.
So that's the competition in Silicon Valley.